along the line, self gets in the way.
Uh-oh.
And if we're not purifying ourselves,
Right, you get in the way.
we'll start out looking good
Right.
and then realize, oh, I'm good at this.
Uh-oh. Help me, Holy
And
Ghost.
then it becomes about me. Can't they see how good I am at this? Nobody told me. Thank you. What happened to people giving me my praise and worship? Because it's not about me. But we'll often set aside what it is God has for us when we step in our own way.
Amen.
In order to prevent us from doing that, we need to purify ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we are dedicated. So they all have come into town. And so verse 30 says, and the priests and the Levites purified themselves and purified the people and the gates and the walls. So let's start with the priests purifying themselves. Because God calls people to a work.
Hey.
Those people are human. They have faults. Bishop messing up, and he's supposed to be a preacher. He's supposed to be the man of God. He's supposed to know better. We do too. But because they are human, human nature gets in the way at times. So even when they get ready to do something, they need to be dedicated. They need to be purified. They need to be cleansed. They need to have their hearts right, especially going for the people of God. You don't want yourself to get in the way. So the priests and the Levites purified themselves. Let me get myself together, and then I can help these people get themselves together. How often do we, on Sunday morning, get ourselves together? By way of purification, before we come into the presence of others. And it's a necessity when you think about it. Because we have been at church and have watched people cut up. Haven't y'all seen that? They must then get themselves together. They didn't have time for purification before they came around other people. It is important to start first with self. So that's exactly what the priests and the Levites did. Let me purify myself. If I'm going for it before the people, and these priests, you know, they had clear evidence of why they needed to be right. Because if we go all the way back to the beginning, when they first became priests in the Levitical line, especially the high priest, if he was going to go in before the Holy of Holies, he definitely had to make sure he was purified. Because if he came before the Lord and he wasn't, he would die. So the high priest knew that. The priests surrounding him knew that. Because, you know, he had to have a rope on when he went in. If he died, they had to pull him out. What a way to think about going before the Lord. If I'm not right, I could die. It's just that serious. I don't need to have sin within, covering it up, dressing it up, looking good on Sunday. But I'm full of sin, even on Sunday. I'm not just going to say just the rest of the week, but even on Sunday. So therefore, the priests knew that they had to be right. So therefore, y'all got theme music playing? I know I was hearing something in the back, which is interesting because we're going to talk about the music, and I was like, I'm hearing some theme music in the background. So the priests had to be purified, and then they purified the people. So as a good symbol of what it looks like, the priests are purified, the people are purified. Now when we go to the wall and we purify the walls and the gates, we understand all of it is dedicated to God. Not just the gate, not just the walls, but me, the priest, and everybody else. Everybody was there to see this. Everybody. The town, the people, those who were had just come from exile, as well as those who may have been remnants in the land. Everybody is there. And so, y'all are mighty quiet this morning. Y'all taking it in? Oh, okay. I'm not going to repeat that, Miss Mary. But I hear you. Because like I said, it's a good lesson. It's good to make you think about yourself. And so then, verse 31, Nehemiah says, Then I brought up the princes of Judah upon the wall. Did y'all catch that? Upon the wall. And appointed 2 great companies of them that gave thanks, whereof one went on the right hand of the wall toward the dung gate. And then after them went Hoshea, the half of the princes of Judah, and Azariah and Ezra and Meshullam, Judah and Benjamin and Shemaiah and Jeremiah, and certain of the priest's sons with trumpets, namely Zechariah the son of Jonathan, the son of Shemaiah, the son of Mattaniah, the son of Micaiah, the son of Zachor, the son of Asaph. Whew. That was a good run right there. It's a good run. And his brethren, Shemaiah and Azriel, Malalai, Gilalai, Maai, Nathaniel, Judah, Hanani, and the musical instruments of David, the man of God, and Ezra the scribe before them. Okay, so let's look at this. Let's go back and remember when at the beginning of the building of the wall, and you know they had the opposition. I think it was Tobiah, maybe, was talking about that little old wall. If a fox get on that wall, they'll tear that wall down. You know, trying to pick and poke at them, this little wall. But we just read that they went and they were on the wall. So it couldn't have been this little wall that he was trying to distract them with, or this, he was trying to distract them with the message of an inferior wall.
Yeah.
But in order for all of these men to go get up on top of the wall, it had to have been something superior. Why was it superior? Because of God. God's hand was at work with them from the beginning to the end of building this wall. And so when they go, Nehemiah says that he has them to get up on the wall, and then there's some that are near the dung gate, and that it means what it means. This is the trash gate. And then in the verses that are not in our written text, there are some that go up near the fish gate and the fountain gate. So you have people on one side of the wall that are up there, and then people on the other side, and they're going to walk in a way that they come and meet together. So did y'all get that visual when you were reading? Okay, so we're all on the same page. And so then you have all these names listed that are difficult for us because this is not our native way of speaking. So, you know, every culture has its own names that you may not understand. Other people don't understand some of our names. But when we read through all of these names, there's a reason for that. They're not in here just for the sake of being in the Bible. Those names mean something, and they connect the dots to certain things. And so even when you read all the way down till you talk about the instruments of David, we knew that David played instruments. We knew that he was a musician. That's supposed to be an easy word. Musician. I was struggling on all those other words. Anyway, so we knew this about him. That's a part of what he did. When you read in the Psalms, you read Psalms of David. You also read Psalms of Asaph. When we were reading in those names, didn't we hear those names? So that lets you know the importance of music in worship and how God used those choirs to usher in what the people needed. Because when we read about this great, these two great companies, you know, normally if you hear company in this sense, you think of armies. But these are choirs. These are two great choirs that are set up in order to set the tone for the praise and worship. Because when you're dedicating something, you're worshiping. You're worshiping the creator of what has been dedicated. And that is God. He created not only the people, but he gave them what they needed in order to build this wall. All right. Any questions or comments? I feel like I'm just talking. Y'all good?
We teaching.
We good? Okay. Okay. All right. Kim, are we?
Yeah, it was sound.
Say that again.
Sound issue.
It was sound issue, so we're not on.
It's on.
It is okay. Okay. I was just trying to make sure. Okay. So, verse 38 is where we are. And the other company of them that gave thanks went over against them, and I after them, and the half of the people upon the wall from beyond the tower of the furnaces even unto the broad wall. And also that day they offered great sacrifices and rejoiced. For God had made them rejoice with great joy. The wives also and the children rejoiced, so that the joy of Jerusalem was heard even afar off. Okay, so let's look at this. So you have the companies of these choirs that are up on the wall. They are on the wall. And then he lists all these other people that are on the wall with them and their positions. And so as you think about when you're in a position of elevation like that, not only are the people close to you able to see or witness it, but people afar off in the other regions surrounding. But not only are they able to see, what we hear is because they offered their sacrifices and rejoice so that it was a loud noise. So the women and the children, the wives and the children were also there, and they also rejoiced. You know, oftentimes when we deal with cultural texts of this era, it's about the men. It's not about the women, it's not about the children, it's about the men. Even so, when you think about the names that are listed, men, because there's an order that God has set up. And God has set up that the man is first. He made man first. He made Adam first. And so there's an order that he sets up. But in this text, we hear that the people, as they were dedicated, and as they gave sacrifices, and they offered these sacrifices and rejoiced, they rejoiced verbally. It wasn't just an internal thing. You know, we can have an internal worship. But what we're hearing here is they verbally rejoiced. But the wives and the children also were rejoicing. And it was such a great noise that people afar off could hear. When we are worshiping God because we appreciate what he has done for us, that's not something for us to keep inside. That's not one of those, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, God. It's not time for that. It's a time for you to let people know how much you're thankful and you're grateful for a God who did not have to do it. Because if we go back and think about it, the reason they were in captivity is because of what? Their own disobedience. It wasn't somebody made them do it. They chose to disobey. So when we disobey, did anybody make us do it? No. People say it. No. You made yourself do it. You can blame Satan all you want to, but it was you that chose to do it. And because just like the children of Israel, God has a right to show us who he is when we are disobedient to him.
That's right. Yeah.
So when he does wonderful things for us, we should demonstrate how much we appreciate that he allowed us to live. Because the wages of sin is death. The wages of sin is death. When you actually go out and sin, you're asking for a payment of death. Because God graciously spares our lives, he has grace and mercy for us. We should be thankful. And it shouldn't be a quiet thanks. We should let everybody know, I appreciate it. He saved me. I was heading down the wrong path. He didn't have to allow me to make it. He didn't have to allow me to be here today. He didn't have to allow me to be, to whatever. He didn't have to allow it. It could have been the end of my story. And sometimes it is the end of people's story. In the middle of their act of disobedience, people have died. So when God has granted me an opportunity to ask for forgiveness, I not only need to ask for forgiveness, but I need to shout my thanks. Because I appreciate what you have allowed me to experience, what you have brought me through, everything that God has allowed me to see in my lifetime. I should be grateful for it. Ms. Gasaway.
I was thinking, as we were talking, look back at all that they went through to get back to the temple, to build the wall, all of the mockery, all of the threats, all of the shutdowns, and then they brought them back to work again. And now we at a point that where everybody said we couldn't do this, it wasn't going to happen. Why you think you're doing it? It's not going to work. But now it's done. So now it's time for y'all to look at us. God has made this work, and God has brought it full circle, and we're now able to shout about it. And all the shouting was to let everybody in the countryside
That's
know
right.
God is being glorified in this place.
That's right. And those enemies, they saw it too. They saw it. And they believed, and they realized it was the work of God that allowed them to do that. Nothing else. It was only God. Which is a reminder for us that when we have enemies and we have those around us, don't be ashamed of what God is doing for you. And don't be concerned about what your enemies may say. Because if you keep forward and keep going forward, keep marching on, keep demonstrating God's love to those around you, they may just come on board.
That's right.
It gives you an opportunity to witness before those around you of just how good your God is. And it gives them an opportunity to come to salvation.
Right.
It's not for us to cut people off or write them off. But what we should do is I should be a living example. I should be an example daily of just how good God is, what he's brought me through. I should be able to tell my testimony. And yes, somebody's going to talk to you about your testimony, because somebody always has something to say. It is what it is. But I should give my testimony with joy and thanksgiving, just as they were being dedicated with thanksgiving, because it was only God that brought me through. And while I'm testifying of the goodness of God, somebody else is getting an opportunity to see, you know what, I've been through. I've done some things. But if God could do that for them, what could he do for me? Those other nations, as Miss Gasway said, those who were surrounding them, not only the outsiders, but even those inside that had an issue with it, got a chance to see just how good God was to his people. He promised his people something, and he delivered on his promise. If we trust him, if we just trust him, if we just trust him, we can see how he's working in our lives. Even those things that seem insurmountable, God can bring us to a great position or a great place. I thought about when I was reading this, and you look at how it was, those who were in the first return came back to a lot of desolation and destruction. And then there was some building up. And then the next group of exile that came in had to do some building up. And so, we're talking now, we're looking at the news, and we're seeing how Maui was desolated. And those who have been there, if you've been there, you know what it looked like before. Very beautiful. And just that area, that little area and I say little area because it's a small island, but that's a big area to them who were living there. When you look at what took place in the destruction of that, it kind of puts you in mind when you think about what the children of Israel were coming back to. They had heard word of what it used to be. They knew that there was a great, glorious temple there. And then when they came back, it wasn't that.
That's right.
The walls were torn down and destroyed in places. You had some broken pieces and broken places, and some were completely destroyed. So you're coming to a place that you heard of the glory, and now you're looking at there's destruction.
Right.
But you feel it deep down inside, I should be a part of the rebuilding. It's a great, insurmountable thing. And it seems like this work is too hard and too much. And while I am trying to muster up what I need to do my part, somebody is in my ear. That ain't good. That ain't what it used to look like. You don't know what you're doing. What y'all come back here for? We could have built this back up ourselves. We don't need y'all. Go back to where you came from. This ain't your land no more. Y'all were in captivity. All the kind of things that people hear while they're trying to do a good work. That already seems it's just too tough. This is too much. I can't do this on my own. Truth is, you can't do it on your own. But God says that I'm with you every step of the way. When we look at this, God demonstrated how he was with them every step of the way. From the inkling of the idea of wanting to rebuild to the completion of it. And now that it's done, we need to be thanking God for it.
That's right. Yeah.
We need to dedicate back to him what he has provided.
Yes.
This is an awesome work. This is an awesome message. And this is something for us to make sure that we don't just look at that's what they had to deal with. Oh, that's old. That was in biblical times. That's ancient times. What about now? Even the things that you may think are insurmountable, you think it's too much. God says, I'm with you. I'm working with you through every step. Just ask me what you need. Ask. We kept reading over and over again with Ezra and Nehemiah, praying and fasting, praying and fasting, praying and fasting. Are we praying and fasting Or are we just saying, oh, this is just too big? Somebody else will do it.
I'm too old.
If somebody else do it, then I'll start. I'm waiting for somebody to come and do it.
Right.
It's in my heart. I really believe it should be done, but somebody else can do it. If they call on me, I'll come and help, but somebody else can do it. Miss McGaha.
Somebody else is more fun.
And did I read that Nehemiah, he fasted and prayed for 4 months, and that was true love for the Israelites. Do we have that love for one another?
That's good.
And what I was going to say previously was that through obedience, God, nothing is impossible. Through obedience, we can maintain whatever He has told us to do, willingly, heart with one another.
That's true. Just obey. Obey. Trust and obey. I've said this before. When my children were in Bible study fellowship as little bitty kids, that was one of their favorite songs, Trust and Obey. For there's no other way to be happy in Jesus than to trust and obey. You trust Him and you obey Him. It sounds simple, doesn't it? We make it so hard. Trust Him and then obey Him. Just do what He says. As my friend Charles Stanley said, trust God and leave the consequences up to Him. You just obey what He says. And whatever comes out of that, God says, I'm working that out. This is on me. If you do what I say, just leave everything else up to me. Why do we make it so hard? Cassandra made it a point when Miss McGaha was beginning to speak about the fact that we think other people are more qualified sometimes. But if God placed it on your heart, it's a reason He placed it on your heart. You know, I was listening to Joel Osteen one time, and he was talking about how, you know, you have these dream killers and people come and try to snatch your dreams away. He said, God is the one that gave you those dreams. Trust God. If He gave you the dream, why are you listening to somebody else? Nehemiah had it down in his heart. He realized it was a big task. He was a slave in his land. He asked the king in whom he was his slave if he could go back home and rebuild the land. And the king said yes, and he gave him what he needed to do it. Who does that? These people, you'd much rather more people come back so you can enslave more people and build your kingdom. But he was obedient because God knows how to turn the hearts of the king. We have to get it down on the inside. Stop worrying about who the boss is, whether it's the CEO or the president or the owner or whomever. If God says, this is what I need for you to do, this is what I want you to do, what do we need to do? Do it. And then if He sends you away and that doesn't work out, it's a reason for it. Trust Him. Because it's still working out for our good. Romans 8:28. Get that down on the inside. It's all working for our good. We may not see it in the beginning. And sometimes it's such a major struggle. We can't understand why. And some things we'll never get the answer to it. But it's working out for our good. Because God is in control. He is sovereign. He has never given up His kingship. He is Lord of all, ruler of all, creator of all. Everything is in His hand.
Yes.
Trust Him.
Yes.
Trust Him.
That's the word now.
Yes, ma'am.
I like what you said about God knows how to turn the hearts of the kings. And sometimes, you know, we have a tendency to think, well, we can do that. And we try to turn the heart of somebody. And sometimes we might succeed, or we think we succeeded in doing that, but it throws everything out of order. And so what you thought you might get or might wind up being able to do comes tumbling down.
That's why it's important, as we talked about, consecrating yourselves. You know, making sure that this work that I'm about to do, whether it's in the house of the Lord, whether it's on your job, you make sure you go before God and you communicate with Him, because He's constantly communicating with us. Sometimes we're just not listening. But communicate with him and listen and act upon what he says, not what we want to do.
Amen.
Anybody else?
Yeah, you know, I was just looking at the aim for change. I was reading the aim for change, and it was talking about how it said by the end of this lesson, you know, we know that part of our worship is thanking God and celebrating our resurrection. Recall the time when God restored us, and we didn't even give God thanks and praise for that. Because when he restores from anything, from whatever we're in, we're supposed to continually give God praise.
That's
Don't
right.
look at nobody else.
That's right.
Because this lesson was for me. I thank God for this lesson. That's why I was into it. So, you know, because the word is it either draw you or drive you. It either help you or don't help you. But this word is helping me.
Amen.
And you know, I was telling you yesterday here at the church, you know, God has did a different thing in my life. I was going through some stuff. I let the devil in, but I had to kick him out. You know, because my house smelled like sin. Yeah, and I hated to go home to it. But now I can go home and rejoice in my house
All
because
right.
I kicked the devil out. I ain't got time for him because life is too short. You know, and it's time for everybody. If you got any sense at all, you can't see all this stuff that's going on, and you still going about your business, just like in Solomon Gomorrah days, people still having sex, having